From the moment the sun rose that morning, Sandra felt a strange heaviness in the air, like the world was holding its breath for something she could not yet understand. She woke in silence, lying still for a long time, thinking about how much had changed in the past few months and how quickly everything between her and Keanu had shifted from friendly ease into something deeper, heavier, and strangely fragile. She had known him for years, decades even, moving in and out of each other's lives like passing seasons, but this time felt different. This time, he had asked her to do something he had never asked anyone before, not even the people closest to him. He had asked her to meet his parents. For most people, meeting the parents was a simple step, a normal sign of trust. But for Keanu, whose private life was wrapped like a sealed box and guarded with a quiet kind of strength, this was more than a gesture. It was a doorway into the parts of himself he rarely let anyone enter. And Sandra, who had seen him grow through scars, failures, victories, loneliness, and long stretches of silence, felt the weight of that invitation the moment he said the words. She remembered how he looked when he asked her. Calm on the outside, slightly nervous on the inside, like a man who was finally ready to reveal something that mattered more than any film, any award, any headline that tried to define him. She remembered the way he held his hands together, how his voice softened as he said, "I want you to meet them." And she remembered how her heart tightened, not from fear, but from a strange mix of gratitude and uncertainty she could not name. And now, as she stood in front of her mirror, brushing her hair while the morning light fell gently across her face, she felt the weight of the moment growing heavier. She did not want to overthink it, but she did. She did not want to feel nervous, but she did. She did not want to imagine everything that could go wrong, but her mind kept circling back to it. When she finally stepped outside, Keanu was already waiting by the car, leaning lightly against the door like he had been standing there for hours. He looked peaceful, but there was something in his eyes that revealed how important this day was to him. The moment he saw her, a soft smile appeared on his face, the kind of smile that felt honest in a way that made her chest warm. "Ready?" he asked, his voice gentle. She nodded even though her heart felt unsteady. "I think so." The drive toward his childhood home was quiet at first, filled with long breaths, soft glances, and moments that neither of them knew how to explain. The road curved through hills and neighborhoods that seemed untouched by time, and with each passing mile, Sandra felt her thoughts grow louder. She wondered what his parents would think of her. She wondered if they knew how deep this bond between her and Keanu truly went. She wondered if she was prepared for whatever truth waited inside that house. But most of all, she wondered why she felt like the day was not just about meeting his parents. It felt like something else was coming, something neither of them had fully prepared for. Keanu finally broke the silence about halfway through the drive. "You don't have to be nervous," he said quietly, keeping his eyes on the road. "They will like you, they already do." She turned to him with a small breath. "How do they already like me? We've never met." He shrugged lightly. "I talk about you a lot." The words hit her harder than he expected. She was silent for a moment, looking at him with a mixture of surprise and tenderness. "What do you say?" He hesitated, and she could see the way his jaw tightened, not from discomfort, but from honesty trying to find the right words. "I tell them you are someone who understands me, someone who listens, someone who makes things feel less heavy." She swallowed gently, her voice quieter when she finally replied, "Keanu, that means more than you know." He nodded once, like he understood everything she was not able to say. The remainder of the ride felt lighter, but it still carried an undercurrent of emotion neither of them fully addressed. When they reached the old neighborhood where he grew up, Sandra noticed how his shoulders softened, how his breathing steadied, and how a subtle nostalgia filled his eyes. It was like he was stepping into a memory he had been afraid to revisit for a long time. The house appeared at the end of the street, surrounded by tall trees and soft patches of flowers that danced gently in the breeze. It was simple, warm, and filled with the kind of quiet charm that made Sandra feel both welcomed and uneasy at the same time. She could almost imagine the younger version of Keanu walking up and down this driveway, carrying dreams, sadness, laughter, and all the pieces of life that shaped the man he became. When the car stopped, Keanu turned to her, his voice low and sincere. "Thank you for coming." She gave a soft smile. "Thank you for asking me." They stood outside the house for a long moment, almost afraid to take the next step. Then Keanu reached out, gently taking her hand. It was warm, steady, and filled with a reassurance she desperately needed. He did not lace their fingers together, but the simple touch felt powerful, like he was telling her without words that she was not alone. As they walked toward the front door, Sandra felt her breath tighten again. She heard sounds from inside, soft footsteps, gentle laughter, the faint clinking of dishes, and the closer she got, the more her heart raced. This was real. This was not a movie scene. This was not a rehearsed moment. This was Keanu opening a chapter of himself that people rarely entered. He knocked lightly, and within seconds the door opened. His mother stood there with warm eyes and a tender smile that reached all the way into the lines around her cheeks. She looked at Sandra with immediate kindness, the kind that made her feel less nervous and more seen. His father appeared behind her, standing slightly back, observing with a calm presence that felt protective. "You must be Sandra," his mother said softly, stepping forward with open arms. Sandra accepted the embrace, feeling a sense of comfort wash over her. "It's so nice to meet you." Keanu's father nodded with a gentle warmth. "We've heard a lot about you." The moment felt reassuring, but underneath it was an energy Sandra couldn't quite name. She felt welcomed, yes, but she also sensed a quiet tension, like something unspoken lingered between the words, like everyone understood that today meant more than she realized. They entered the house, and Sandra immediately felt the presence of history. Family photos, old books, the smell of warm spices from the kitchen, and the faint sound of soft music playing somewhere in the back room. She could tell Keanu had not been here in a long time. She watched him look around, his eyes softening when he saw an old movie poster he once talked about, a small wooden carving he made in his childhood, and a shelf filled with memories he had kept quiet about. As they all sat down in the living room, the conversation began gently. His parents asked about her work, her hobbies, her childhood, the simple things that built a picture of who she was. Sandra answered with honesty and openness, but she could feel Keanu watching her closely. Not with pressure, not with expectation, but with a quiet hope that she would feel safe here. As time passed, Sandra noticed something she was not expecting. His parents were kind, warm, and welcoming, but they were also observant, very observant. They watched Keanu closely, like they were studying the parts of him he never allowed others to see. They watched Sandra too, with eyes that seemed to be searching for something deeper than polite conversation. About an hour into the visit, something shifted. Keanu's father leaned forward slightly and said something that changed the mood of the entire room. "Keanu, are you sure you are ready?" Keanu stiffened. Sandra froze, her breath trapped halfway in her chest. His mother placed a hand gently over her husband's, as if silently reminding him to be cautious, but the words had already been spoken, hanging in the air like a question Sandra was never meant to hear. She turned to Keanu slowly, her voice quiet. "Ready for what?" Keanu opened his mouth, then closed it again. He looked at his parents, then at her, then at the floor. There was something in his eyes, fear, conflict, memory, maybe even pain. She had never seen him look like that before. Finally, he inhaled deeply, as if gathering courage he had buried long ago. "I didn't plan to tell you today," he said softly, "but my parents know and they think it's time." Sandra felt her heart pound, louder, heavier, faster. "Tell me what," she whispered. Keanu lifted his eyes slowly, meeting her gaze with a truth she was not ready for. "There's something about me you don't know," he said, "something that could change everything." She felt her body tense, her breath caught in fear and anticipation. Before she could speak, before he could say the next words, the front door creaked open behind them. Everyone turned. Someone stepped inside. Someone Sandra had never seen before. Someone who looked directly at Keanu with eyes that carried a story powerful enough to shatter the day. And Sandra felt the world shift beneath her feet. The room fell into a strange, trembling silence the moment the stranger stepped through the doorway. Sandra felt her breath stop in her chest, not because the person looked threatening, but because there was something in their eyes that carried too much history, too much pain, too much truth. It was the kind of truth that walked into a room before a single word was spoken. Keanu froze, his entire body tightening in a way Sandra had never seen before. The gentle warmth he carried when talking to his parents moments earlier vanished, replaced by a quiet fear that seeped into the air around him. His parents exchanged a heavy look, the kind that reveals everything without saying anything. Sandra had no idea what was happening, but she felt it immediately. This was not a normal visitor. This was someone connected to a part of Keanu's life she had never been allowed to see. The stranger closed the door softly behind them, their footsteps slow and deliberate as they entered the room. They were older than Keanu by a few years, with eyes that seemed to have lived 100 different lives. Their presence carried a softness and a storm at the same time, like someone who knew how to be gentle but also how to break. And then they spoke, their voice quiet but sharp enough to cut through the room. "Keanu, it's time." Sandra felt a chill move through her. Keanu's jaw tightened, his hands subtly curling into fists before he forced them open again. He had always been a man of calm energy, steady emotion, and grounded silence, but in this moment he looked like someone who had been running from something for a long time and had just run out of road. His father stood slowly, placing a steadying hand on his shoulder. "You knew this day would come," he said gently, though the sadness behind the words was unmistakable. Keanu didn't reply. Instead, his eyes flicked toward Sandra, and for the first time since she had known him, she saw genuine fear. Not fear of danger, but fear of losing something, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being seen too clearly. Sandra leaned forward, her voice soft, trying to break through the thick tension. "Keanu, who is this?" He swallowed hard, looking at the stranger before turning back to her. "This is my brother." The words hit her like a sudden wave, not because she was shocked that he had a brother, but because of the way he said it. Soft, painful, almost apologetic, like this truth carried a weight he believed might push her away. The stranger, his brother, offered a gentle nod toward her. "My name is Lucas." Sandra nodded slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hi." Lucas's eyes softened, recognizing the confusion on her face. "I'm sorry to come like this," he said, "but he didn't tell you the full story. He couldn't, not yet." Keanu stepped forward, almost defensive. "She doesn't need to hear it this way." Lucas shook his head. "She needs to hear it in any way she can, Keanu. You've waited too long already." Sandra felt her heart tighten. "Hear what?" Keanu closed his eyes for a moment, like he was trying to gather strength from a place inside himself that had been quiet for years. When he opened them again, he looked directly at her. "There is something from my past that I have never talked about, something that changed everything for me. Lucas was part of it." Lucas stepped closer, his expression heavy. "I wasn't just part of it, I caused it." Everything inside Sandra stilled. Keanu turned sharply toward Lucas. "Don't say it like that. We made choices, we both." Lucas cut him off with a quiet, pained sigh. "You're still protecting me. After all these years, you're still doing it." Keanu said nothing. Lucas continued, his voice trembling in a way that made Sandra's chest ache. "Sandra, what happened in our family years ago, it nearly destroyed Keanu's life. It shaped who he is, why he is quiet, why he disappears sometimes, why he keeps people at a distance." Keanu flinched at the words, but didn't deny them. Lucas's eyes lowered. "And it's my fault." Sandra's breath shook, but she listened. Keanu finally spoke, his voice barely steady. "Lucas struggled with addiction, really bad addiction, and when we were young, much younger, I did everything I could to help him, to pull him out, to keep him alive. But," he looked at Lucas with pain that ran deep, "there were things that happened, things I haven't told anyone." Lucas's lips trembled. "He saved my life more times than I can count, but in the process he lost pieces of himself, pieces he never got back." The room grew unbearably quiet. Sandra felt her heart ache for both of them, but especially for Keanu, who carried wounds behind a calm smile that very few people in the world ever got close enough to see. Lucas took a shaky breath and looked at her with eyes full of remorse. "You're important to him. He wouldn't bring you here unless you were, and because he brought you here, you deserve to know the truth before things move any further." Sandra looked at Keanu, searching his face. He avoided her eyes, and that hurt more than anything. She reached out slowly, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "Keanu," she whispered, "why didn't you tell me any of this?" He finally met her gaze, and the pain in his eyes was almost overwhelming. "Because I didn't want you to see me as broken, or complicated, or someone who would bring chaos into your life." Her chest tightened. "You're not chaos." He shook his head. "I have spent years cleaning up messes, rebuilding my life, trying to forgive myself for things I couldn't control. I didn't want my past to affect anything between us." Lucas stepped back, giving them space. "But the past doesn't disappear just because you don't talk about it." Keanu whispered, "I know." Sandra felt something unexpected, a strange mix of sadness, tenderness, and respect. She knew what it meant for someone like Keanu, someone so private, to reveal something so heavy. The emotion behind it made her want to step closer, not away. But before she could speak, Lucas moved toward Keanu, pulling a small folded piece of paper from his pocket. His hands trembled as he held it out. "It's back," Lucas said. "The notice came today." Keanu's face drained of color. "What do you mean it's back?" Lucas swallowed hard. "The center called, they want a meeting. They said something changed." Sandra looked between them, her confusion growing. "What center?" Keanu didn't answer, so Lucas did. "Keanu has been funding my recovery center for years," Lucas said. "Quietly, privately. He pays for my treatments, my counseling, everything. He never lets anyone know because he's terrified people will think less of him or of our family. But the center, they've applied for a special program, and if it goes through, it might expose everything he kept hidden." Keanu clenched his jaw. "I don't care about exposure, I care about you." Lucas shook his head. "And I care about you, that's why I'm here. If this gets out, people will twist it. They always do. And she," he glanced at Sandra, "deserves to know before the world tries to rewrite your truth." Keanu's hands trembled slightly. "I didn't want her dragged into this." Sandra stood slowly, stepping closer to him. Her voice was soft, steady, unwavering. "Keanu, I'm here because I want to be here, not because your life is perfect, not because you hide your struggles, but because of who you are." His eyes softened with a mix of gratitude and fear. "But you don't understand," he whispered. "What happened back then, it wasn't just addiction. There was a moment, one night, that changed everything." Lucas lowered his head, tears slipping from his eyes. "I hurt someone, Sandra, badly, and Keanu, he protected me. He stood between me and the consequences. He took the blame for something he didn't do." The words hit Sandra like a blow. Her heart ached so sharply she had to steady herself. Keanu whispered, "Lucas, stop." Lucas shook his head. "No, she needs to know the man you are. You lost roles, you lost years of your life, you lost people's trust, all because you tried to keep me from falling apart." Keanu closed his eyes tightly, like the memory was something that had burned him for years. Lucas placed the folded paper on the table. "The center wants a full review. They want statements, records, interviews. If this goes forward, people might finally learn the truth." He looked at Keanu with guilt and love. "And I'm scared the world will destroy you again." Keanu opened his eyes, and Sandra had never seen so much pain layered over so much love. "I would do it again," he said quietly. Lucas's voice broke. "I know you would, that's why I'm here, to ask you not to." Sandra looked at the paper on the table, then at Keanu, then at Lucas. Everything felt like it was shifting too fast, too painfully, too powerfully. She had come here thinking she was just meeting his parents, maybe sharing lunch, maybe learning more about his childhood. Instead, she was learning about the kind of man he was when the world wasn't watching. A man who had carried guilt, responsibility, and heartbreak for years without ever asking for anything in return. She stepped closer to him, gently taking his hand. He looked at her, surprised by the warmth of her touch. "Keanu," she whispered, "whatever this is, you won't face it alone." His mother wiped her eyes quietly. His father stood still, as if witnessing a moment he had prayed would someday happen. Lucas looked at Sandra with a fragile kind of hope. He needs someone who won't walk away when things get hard. Sandra nodded. "I'm not walking away." But then Lucas said something that made the room feel cold again. "Sandra, you need to be prepared, because the truth about that night, it isn't only about me." Keanu stiffened. Lucas stepped back, breathing shakily. Someone else was involved, someone who never forgave him, someone who has been waiting for the right moment to bring it all back. Sandra's heart dropped. Keanu's voice trembled. "Lucas, don't." Lucas looked at him with deep sadness. "She needs to know. They reached out to me last night. They said they're coming." Sandra felt her entire body tense. "Who?" Lucas swallowed hard. "A woman," he whispered. "Someone from our past, someone who blames Keanu for everything that went wrong." Keanu whispered, "No, not her." Lucas nodded, tears falling again. "She's on her way." And at that moment, a knock echoed at the door, sharp, deliberate, and filled with the kind of tension that makes the world hold its breath. Keanu's face went pale. Sandra's heart nearly stopped. Lucas whispered, "It's her." The knock at the door echoed like a warning, like the past itself had reached across years of silence and finally demanded to be heard. Sandra felt her breath lock in her chest as the room fell into a heavy, strained stillness. Keanu stood frozen, his shoulders stiff, his face pale, his eyes fixed on the door as if opening it would unleash something he had been trying to outrun for half his life. His parents looked terrified, Lucas looked ashamed, and Sandra felt a strange mixture of fear and protectiveness flooding through her. She didn't know who the woman behind that door was, but she could tell from Keanu's reaction that this wasn't just someone from his past. This was someone whose presence carried history sharp enough to reopen old wounds. The knock came again, louder this time. Keanu took a slow breath, but his voice trembled when he finally spoke. "I didn't think she would actually come." Lucas stepped forward, guilt written all over him. "I'm sorry, Keanu, I didn't want this. I never wanted her to show up here." But it was too late. Keanu's father placed a firm hand on his son's shoulder. "Whatever happens, we face it together." Sandra had never seen his father look so serious, so protective. It made her wonder just how deep and complicated this part of their family history really was. Keanu finally moved toward the door. Sandra could see his hands shaking slightly, could hear the uneven pull of his breathing. She quietly stepped closer, not touching him but letting her presence be a silent strength beside him. He glanced at her, and the look in his eyes said everything: fear, apology, vulnerability, and a kind of silent plea that she wouldn't walk away after today. He opened the door, and there she was. A woman in her late 30s or early 40s, with dark eyes that carried exhaustion, resentment, and something even heavier: loss. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her posture straight and controlled, but her expression revealed everything she tried to hide. She looked at Keanu like he was the ghost she had been chasing for years, like seeing him again felt both painful and necessary. Her voice was sharp at first, but tired underneath. "Hello, Keanu." Keanu swallowed hard. "Hello, Mara." Mara, the name felt heavy in the room the moment he said it, like it had lived in the cracks of this family's silence for years. Mara's eyes shifted from Keanu to Sandra, studying her with a kind of cold curiosity. "So you must be the reason he finally came back home." Sandra felt the sting of the words but stayed calm. "I'm Sandra." Mara nodded once, but her expression didn't soften. "I know who you are. The whole world knows who you are." She said it without malice, but also without admiration. More like someone acknowledging a fact she didn't care about. Keanu stepped slightly in front of Sandra, not aggressively but protectively. "Mara, this isn't the time for..." Mara raised a hand to stop him. "I'm not here for her, I'm here for you, both of you," she added, glancing toward Lucas. Lucas lowered his head, guilt radiating from him like an unwelcome shadow. Keanu exhaled slowly. "Mara, what do you want?" She stepped inside, closing the door behind her with a quiet finality. "I want the truth, the whole truth." Keanu's mother stood from the couch, her eyes full of worry. "Mara, please, this is not the place." "It is exactly the place," Mara replied. "This is where everything started, this is where everything ended, and this is where it has to be fixed." Sandra's heart tightened. What had happened in this house all those years ago? What had tied Mara to Keanu and Lucas in such a painful, complicated way that she carried this anger for so long? Keanu rubbed a hand over his face. "Mara, it has been years. I thought we agreed to let the past stay in the past." Mara stared at him with a mixture of sadness and steel. "You agreed, I didn't." Lucas stepped forward, his voice trembling. "Mara, please don't do this to him." Mara's eyes flashed with a pain she could no longer hide. "Lucas, you of all people don't get to ask me that. You know exactly what your choices cost me." Lucas shut his eyes tightly, and Sandra could see tears forming. Keanu's voice softened, but the strain in it was unmistakable. "Mara, what do you want me to say?" She took a slow breath, steadying herself. "I want you to say the truth that you shielded Lucas that night, the truth that you took the fall for something you did not do, the truth that cost me my sister." Sandra felt her stomach drop. Her sister. Her sister." The words echoed in her mind like a shockwave. "Mara's sister." She looked at Lucas, at Keanu, at Mara. Everything suddenly felt sharper, deeper, heavier. Keanu stepped forward, his voice breaking. "Mara, I never wanted your sister to get hurt, you know that. I tried to stop things that night. I tried to fix it. I tried." "Yes," Mara interrupted bitterly. "You tried. and yet she still ended up in the hospital because of what Lucas did. Lucas crumbled into himself, tears falling openly now. "I'm sorry, Myra, I'm so sorry." Myra looked at him with a pain so raw that Sandra felt it physically. "Sorry doesn't give me back the sister I lost." Lucas shook. "She didn't die because of me." Myra's voice went cold. "No, she didn't die that night, but she died inside. She stopped trusting people, she lost herself. She lost everything, and I watched her break piece by piece every single year afterward." Keanu whispered, "Myra, please." Myra turned back to him, her voice trembling. "Keanu, you took the blame. You lost years of work, years of opportunities, years of peace, and still you protected him, even when it ruined you." Sandra's heart ached. She had always known Keanu was a man of deep compassion, but she never imagined the weight of sacrifice he carried so quietly. Myra's eyes welled with tears for the first time. "You never told the truth. You never told anyone, and I never forgave you for that." Keanu lowered his head. "I know." Myra wiped her tears angrily, trying to gather herself again. "But now the center wants records, statements, interviews. The truth will come out whether you want it to or not." Sandra stepped forward gently. "Myra, what do you want Keanu to do?" Myra looked at her, studying her expression, her calmness, her sincerity. For a moment, something softened in her eyes. "I want him to stop hiding," she said quietly. "I want him to stop carrying guilt that doesn't belong to him. I want him to stop protecting Lucas if it means destroying himself." Lucas shook his head violently. "No, no, Myra, please don't do this. If the truth comes out, I'm the one they'll come after. I'm the one who—" "Lucas," Myra cut in sharply, "your brother has spent years paying for your mistakes. He lost everything. He lost roles, time, peace, sleep. And you got to rebuild your life while he carried the blame." Lucas broke down, sobbing. Keanu pulled him into his arms, holding him tightly, protectively, lovingly. It was a heartbreaking sight. Two brothers bound by guilt, love, sacrifice, and a shared past that neither of them had ever truly healed from. Myra looked away, her face hardening again. "The review will happen. I can't stop that, but I came here to give you a chance to decide how the truth comes out, on your terms or theirs." Keanu held Lucas closer, whispering something Sandra couldn't hear. His father finally spoke, his voice low but firm. "Myra, is there no room for forgiveness?" Myra closed her eyes, tears slipping out again. "I don't know, maybe someday, but forgiveness doesn't erase the truth, and I think Keanu has suffered enough for something he didn't do." Sandra stepped closer to Myra, her voice soft but strong. "And what about Lucas? What does he deserve?" Myra opened her eyes, staring at Sandra with surprising emotion. "He deserves honesty. He deserves help. He deserves a chance to take responsibility instead of running from it." Lucas sobbed harder. Keanu whispered to him, "It's okay, I'm here, you're okay." Sandra felt tears forming in her own eyes. She had never seen Keanu so raw, so exposed, so human. It made her love him, not romantically, but deeply, compassionately, the way you love someone who has carried too much for too long. Myra stepped toward the table and tapped the folded paper Lucas had brought. "The meeting is tomorrow morning. If you don't show up, they will move forward without you. And if that happens, the truth will be told in a way you can't control." Keanu finally lifted his head, his voice hoarse. "I'll be there." Myra nodded once. "Good." She turned to leave, but then something unexpected happened. She looked at Sandra one more time, and her voice softened almost to a whisper. "Take care of him," she said. "He's been carrying the weight of everyone for too long." And then she walked out, closing the door behind her. The silence that followed was suffocating. Lucas collapsed into the chair, shaking uncontrollably. Keanu knelt beside him, holding him tightly. His parents stood close, uncertain how to help, and Sandra stood there, absorbing everything, feeling the full force of what she had walked into. This wasn't just a family secret. This was a wound that had shaped Keanu's entire life. She stepped forward and placed a gentle hand on Keanu's back. He looked up at her, his eyes filled with exhaustion and fear. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't want you to see this part of me." She shook her head slowly. "Keanu, this doesn't change how I see you. It makes me understand you more." His eyes softened, his breath catching slightly. Lucas looked up at her with pleading eyes. "Please, don't let him do this alone." She squeezed Keanu's shoulder gently. He won't. But then, as if the world wasn't finished twisting the knife, Keanu's phone buzzed on the table. He reached for it slowly, hesitating before he looked at the screen. And when he did, his face drained of all color. Sandra leaned in. "Keanu, what is it?" His voice shook as he whispered, "It's a message from the center." Lucas went still. Keanu swallowed hard, reading the words again. His hand trembled. "They want me," he whispered, "to testify against Lucas." The room fell into shattered silence. Sandra stared at him in disbelief. Lucas's face twisted in horror. Keanu closed his eyes, breaking inside. And Sandra knew. Everything was about to change. The air inside the house shifted the moment Keanu whispered those words. It felt like every sound in the world disappeared, like even the walls leaned in to listen. Lucas stared at his brother, his face pale and trembling, his breath catching in his throat as if someone had taken the ground out from under him. Keanu's parents froze in place, shock stretching across their expressions like cracks forming on glass. Sandra could only watch, her heart hammering, her breath shallow, as she realized they were standing at the edge of something none of them were prepared for. Keanu lowered the phone slowly, almost as if it were burning his hand. He couldn't look at his brother. He couldn't look at anyone. He just stared at the floor, shoulders tight, jaw clenched, eyes hollow. He had faced grief, loss, betrayal, loneliness, and the cold judgment of the world, but this request to testify against the very person he had spent years protecting, was something that cut deeper than any wound he had carried before. Lucas's voice broke through the silence, shaking violently. They want you to testify against me." Keanu swallowed hard, but no words came out. His hands trembled by his sides. Sandra had never seen him look so lost, so trapped, so torn between love and responsibility. Lucas stood slowly from the chair, his legs unsteady. "Keanu, say something, please." Keanu finally lifted his eyes, and the pain inside them was almost unbearable to look at. "I don't want to do this, Lucas. You know that." Lucas shook his head, tears spilling onto his cheeks. "But they're making you. They're trying to destroy you again, Keanu. They won't stop until you lose everything." Keanu's father stepped forward, his voice low but steady. "This is a system matter now. The center needs accountability, but they don't understand what happened back then. None of them know the full story." Lucas covered his face with his hands. "I can't survive this again. I can't. Keanu, you saving me was the only reason I made it out. If you testify, I'll go back to being that person." Keanu flinched as if Lucas had struck him. Sandra's heart twisted painfully. She could see both sides, Lucas drowning in guilt and fear, Keanu suffocating under a burden he didn't choose. She stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on Keanu's arm, grounding him. "Keanu," she whispered softly, "you don't have to decide right now." He shook his head, his voice hoarse. "But I do. The meeting is tomorrow. They want the statement before I arrive." His mother's eyes filled with tears. This is cruel, after everything he sacrificed. Mara's pain had been understandable, but this official pressure, this bureaucratic demand, felt wrong, cold, and inhumane. Sandra realized the world only ever saw Keanu as strong, gentle, unbreakable, but they had no idea that underneath that calm exterior was a man who had been torn apart more times than he deserved. Lucas stepped closer to him, desperation filling his voice. "Keanu, I can't let you lose everything again because of me." Keanu closed his eyes. "Lucas, you're my brother." Lucas shook violently. "That's exactly why you shouldn't protect me anymore." The words pierced through Keanu like a blade. Sandra saw it, the way his shoulders tensed, the way his breath caught, the way he looked at Lucas with disbelief. Protecting Lucas had been instinct, loyalty, love, and now Lucas was asking him to stop. Keanu's voice cracked. "Lucas, you don't understand. I can't testify against you. I can't be the reason your life falls apart." Lucas stepped back, tears streaming. "And I can't let you destroy your life for a mistake I made when I was someone I don't even recognize anymore." Keanu dragged his hands through his hair, pacing, trying to breathe, trying to make sense of the impossible choice in front of him. "They don't want the truth," he whispered. "They want a story that fits their narrative. If I speak, they'll twist it. No matter what I say, someone gets hurt." Sandra's heart ached. She could see how trapped he felt. He was damned if he did, damned if he didn't. She watched him struggle to breathe, watched him fight his own memories, watched him carry the weight of 2 lives on his shoulders. She moved closer, her voice anchored and calm. "Keanu, tell me what happened that night." He froze. Everyone froze. Lucas's breath hitched, his body stiffening with fear. Keanu looked at her like she had just asked him to reopen the deepest wound of his life. But Sandra didn't look away. She needed to understand. If she was going to help him through this, she had to know. Keanu shook his head slowly. "Sandra, some things are better left buried." She stayed steady. Buried things don't stay buried, not forever. His eyes filled with the fear of someone who had kept a truth locked away for too long. "If I tell you, you might see me differently." She stepped even closer, her voice soft enough to soothe but strong enough to hold him. "Keanu, there is nothing you could tell me that would make me walk away." Lucas wiped his face, his voice trembling. "Don't make him do this, Sandra. The story will break him." She looked at Lucas gently. "The truth doesn't break people, hiding it does." Keanu leaned against the wall, covering his face with his hands. For a long moment he said nothing. The silence was thick, suffocating, filled with memories that had claws. Then slowly, painfully, he lowered his hands and looked at her. "It happened on a winter night," he began, his voice shaking, "when Lucas was at his worst." Lucas turned away, ashamed. Keanu's eyes dimmed with old pain. "He was using again. He had disappeared for 2 days. I went looking for him. I searched every alley, every corner of the city. When I found him, he wasn't alone." Lucas's breath trembled. "Keanu, please." Keanu continued anyway, the truth pushing its way out. "He was with Mara's sister. She was trying to help him. She had always been kind to our family. She thought she could save him. But that night, Lucas was out of control." Lucas shook, whispering, "I didn't mean to hurt her." Keanu nodded painfully. "I know, but you pushed her. You were panicking. You didn't know your own strength." She fell. She hit her head. She was unconscious. Sandra swallowed hard, her heart pounding. Keanu's voice broke. "I thought she was dead. I panicked. Lucas broke down, begging me not to leave him alone, begging me to fix it. So I did the only thing I could think of. I told him to run." Lucas cried openly. "You shouldn't have protected me. I didn't deserve it." Keanu wiped his face with shaking hands. "I took responsibility. I told everyone I was the one who pushed her. I went to the hospital. I faced the questions, the shame, the headlines, the judgment. I did everything I could to shield him because I thought I could handle it better than he could." Sandra felt tears in her eyes. "Keanu, you were just a kid." He laughed bitterly. "The world doesn't care. They see a mistake and they brand you with it forever." Lucas's voice cracked. "And I let you carry it alone. I let my big brother destroy his life for me." Keanu's mother sobbed quietly. "We tried to fix it, but everything spiraled." Keanu continued, his voice faint. "When Mara's sister woke up, she didn't remember what happened. She thought I did it, and I let her believe it, because I wanted Lucas to get clean, to get better, to live." Lucas fell to his knees, sobbing uncontrollably. "You saved me, but you lost so much." Keanu knelt beside him, tears falling freely. "I didn't care about losing things. I cared about losing you." Sandra watched them, her heart breaking. This wasn't a simple mistake. This was a tragedy that had shaped both of their lives, a tragedy filled with love twisted into sacrifice, guilt twisted into silence, fear twisted into loyalty. She stepped closer, her voice steady. "Keanu, what do you want to do now?" Keanu lifted his head slowly, eyes red and exhausted. "I don't know." Lucas grabbed his brother's hands. "Testify," he whispered. "Tell them the truth. Tell them what happened. Don't protect me anymore." Keanu froze. "Lucas." "I mean it," Lucas cried. "I can't let you keep carrying this. I will talk to them. I will tell them everything." Keanu shook his head violently. "You don't understand what that will do to you. They'll take away your recovery support. They might send you." "I don't care," Lucas whispered. "I care about you finally being free." Sandra placed a hand on Lucas's shoulder. "Lucas, you are strong enough now." He looked at her, hope flickering through the pain. "Do you really think so?" She nodded gently. "Yes, I do." But before anyone could speak again, a sudden loud crash echoed from the other side of the house. Everyone jumped. Keanu stood instantly, pulling Lucas up with him. What was that? His father moved toward the hallway. It came from the back room. Sandra felt a wave of dread wash over her. The energy in the house shifted, like something else had arrived, something none of them wanted to face tonight. Another crash. Then footsteps. Fast. Heavy. Running. Keanu stepped forward, his entire body tense. "Stay behind me," he said, voice firm but trembling. Lucas grabbed his brother's arm. "Keanu, don't go alone." Their father called from the hallway, alarm in his voice. "Someone is inside the house." Sandra's heart pounded violently. Keanu's jaw tightened. "Who?" And then, before anyone could move, a voice screamed from the back room. A woman's voice. Filled with rage. Filled with grief. Filled with recognition. "Keanu Reeves, you ruined my sister's life." Sandra froze. Mara's sister was here. In the house. And she wasn't alone. Keanu turned pale. Lucas staggered backward. Sandra felt terror crawl up her spine. And just as Keanu took a step toward the hallway, the woman's voice echoed again. "You're going to pay for what you did." The lights flickered. Someone rushed forward. And the house erupted into chaos the moment the voice thundered through the hallway. Every nerve in Sandra's body jolted awake. The house, once warm with family tension and whispered truths, now felt like it had been split open by a storm none of them were ready for. Keanu took a step forward, his body tight with alarm, his eyes alert in a way Sandra had never seen before. Lucas stumbled backward, his breath shaking, his face filled with shame and fear. Keanu's parents froze, unsure whether to run or protect, their expressions tight with worry that seemed to mirror the trembling walls around them. Another shattering crash came from the back room, glass breaking, furniture toppling. The sound echoed like a warning shot, like the anger of years finally given a voice. Sandra felt her heart slam against her ribs as Keanu's father called out again, his voice breathless and tense. "She's in the storage room." She broke the window. Keanu didn't wait. He moved instantly, pushing past the living room furniture, heading straight toward the hallway. Sandra reached for him, her fingers brushing his arm, but he had already stepped out of reach. The urgency in his movements told her everything. This wasn't just danger. This was a collision of grief he had tried to outrun for half his life. Lucas tried to follow, but his legs shook violently. Sandra steadied him, placing a firm hand on his back. "Stay here," she said gently. "I'll go with him." Lucas nodded weakly, but she could see in his eyes that he felt responsible for every terrible moment unfolding around them. Keanu's mother pulled Lucas into her arms, whispering comforting words that trembled with fear. His father disappeared down the hallway as Sandra hurried after Keanu. The hallway felt darker than before, as if anger itself had absorbed the light. Shards of broken glass glittered across the floor like scattered memories, sharp and dangerous. A cold breeze drifted through the shattered window from the storage room, carrying with it the smell of winter air and something heavier, grief, rage, and the echo of a past none of them had fully faced. Sandra stepped carefully, her voice soft but steady. "Keanu, wait." He didn't turn around. "I can't let her hurt anyone." Sandra quickened her pace, closing the distance until she was just behind him. "You won't face this alone." He slowed slightly, as if her words softened the fear in him for a moment. But before he could answer, another crash echoed from inside the room. Keanu flung open the door. Mara's sister stood inside. Her clothes were disheveled, her hair wild, her eyes red from crying, years of sorrow hanging heavily in every line of her face. She held a broken lamp in her hands, her knuckles white around the fractured base, her chest rising and falling with ragged breaths. She wasn't violent out of malice. She was violent out of heartbreak. The moment she saw Keanu, she froze. The lamp dropped from her hand and shattered across the floor. Her voice came out raw, choked, trembling. You stood here in this house and pretended everything was fine. You looked me in the eyes for years and let me believe you hurt her." Keanu raised his hands slowly, palms open. "Please listen to me." She shook her head violently, tears spilling. "No, you don't get to ask for that. You don't get to ask for anything." Keanu's father stood behind her, trying to de-escalate, but she was too deep in her pain to hear him. Sandra stepped carefully into the room, standing just slightly behind Keanu. The cold air streaming through the broken window filled the space with a stinging chill. Keanu tried again, his voice heartbroken. "I never meant to hurt her." Mara's sister stepped forward, pointing at him with shaking hands. But you did. She trusted you. She would have trusted your family with her life. And that night, she came home broken. She cried and never told anyone what happened, but I knew something inside her had shattered. Keanu swallowed hard, pain tightening his features. I'm sorry, I am so sorry. She laughed, a painful, empty sound. Sorry? You think sorry fixes years of watching my sister lose pieces of herself? You think sorry brings back the person she used to be? Sandra felt her heart twist. This wasn't someone looking for revenge. This was someone drowning in grief, searching for somewhere to place it. Mara's sister's voice cracked again. She never got her life back, not really. She lived, but she didn't live. She smiled, but it wasn't real. And every time I saw you in films or interviews, the world loved you, and I kept thinking, does he even feel guilty? Keanu closed his eyes as tears slipped down his cheeks. Every day, I felt it every day. For the first time, Mara's sister hesitated. Keanu's sincerity, the pain in his voice, the truth in his tears, it caught her off guard. She blinked rapidly, her breath uneven. Sandra took a small step forward, her voice gentle. He carried the guilt. He lost roles. He lost years. He didn't protect himself. Mara's sister turned sharply toward her. And who are you to speak for him? Sandra didn't flinch. Someone who has seen what it did to him. Someone who knows he never stopped caring. There was a long, trembling pause. Mara's sister's shoulders dropped slightly, though anger still simmered beneath the sorrow. Then why didn't he tell the truth? Why didn't he say it was Luca's? Keanu opened his eyes, meeting her gaze. Because Luca's would have died. He was barely surviving as it was. If I let him take the blame, he wouldn't have lived through it. Mara's sister's face crumpled. So you chose which life mattered more. Keanu shook his head. No, I chose the pain I thought I could survive. I was wrong, but I did it out of love, not out of selfishness. The wind from the window rustled through the torn curtains, filling the silence between them. For a moment, no one moved. Then Lucas appeared in the doorway, pale and trembling, his eyes red from crying. Keanu turned sharply. Lucas, stay back. But Lucas stepped forward, his voice breaking. No, I need to say this. Mara's sister stiffened when she saw him. Her eyes widened with recognition, with hatred, with hurt so deep it felt like the room itself dimmed. Lucas dropped to his knees. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I was not in control. I wasn't myself. But that doesn't change what I did. I hurt her. I hurt you, and I hurt my brother. I have been trying to live with that guilt every day. Mara's sister shook her head slowly. You took my sister from me. Lucas looked up at her with shaking desperation. I know, and if you want me to face the consequences, I will. But Keanu, he doesn't deserve to lose any more. Keanu crouched beside him, gripping his shoulders, his voice raw. Lucas, don't do this. Lucas looked at him with tear-filled determination. I have to. I can't let you protect me anymore, not if it means losing yourself. Mara's sister's lips trembled as she watched them. I don't know if forgiveness is possible. I don't know if I can ever look at either of you without seeing what happened that night. Keanu nodded slowly. I don't expect forgiveness. Lucas whispered, I don't deserve it. Sandra stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. Sometimes forgiveness isn't about saying someone was right. It's about letting go of the weight so you can breathe again. Mara's sister looked at Sandra with conflicted eyes. The pain inside her was a storm, one she had carried alone for too long. But something in Sandra's voice, something in Keanu's broken expression, something in Lucas's surrender, it all seemed to reach her heart in a way anger couldn't block. She took a shaky breath. I came here today ready to destroy you, both of you. I wanted to take everything from you the way I felt you took everything from her. Keanu and Lucas lowered their heads. But standing here, Mara's sister continued softly, I don't see monsters. I see two broken men who never healed, two men who drowned in guilt while the world kept moving. She wiped her eyes. I don't know what I want anymore. Keanu stepped carefully closer. I want to make things right, whatever that means. Mara's sister swallowed. Then face the truth tomorrow. Both of you, no more lies, no more protection, no more silence. Lucas nodded, we will. Keanu hesitated. If I speak tomorrow, they might. A sudden noise cut him off. Loud, sharp, from outside. Everyone turned. The sound came again. Then again. Keanu's father rushed into the hallway. Someone is outside the house. Sandra's stomach dropped. Is it Mara? Mara's sister shook her head. She wouldn't come here again tonight. Another noise rattled the front door. Heavy footsteps. Multiple people. Keanu stepped forward, protective instincts rising. Get behind me. Lucas grabbed his arm. Keanu, don't. The footsteps grew louder. Shadows moved past the windows. Keanu's mother whispered fearfully, "Who is out there?" Keanu moved toward the living room, Sandra close behind him. He peeked through the curtain, and his entire face drained of color. "No," he whispered, "not them." Sandra's heart pounded. "Keanu, who is it?" He swallowed hard. His voice came out low, shaken. "Reporters, someone leaked the story." Lucas staggered backward. Mara's sister gasped. Sandra's pulse surged painfully as flashing lights filled the windows. And before anyone could react, the front door handle began to turn. The sound of the front door handle jerking sent a cold wave of fear through everyone in the room. Sandra felt her breath catch as the shadows of reporters shifted outside the windows, their cameras flashing like lightning against the glass. It wasn't just a few people. It was a crowd, a swarm, a tidal wave of voices rising into the night. The moment someone leaked the story, whether it was the center, Mara, or someone else entirely, the outside world pounced faster than anyone inside the house could prepare for. Keanu stepped forward, his shoulders stiff, his heartbeat pounding loud enough that Sandra could practically feel it in the air. Lucas looked terrified, Mara's sister stood frozen, and Keanu's parents watched helplessly as the outside world pushed at their front door. "Keanu," Sandra whispered, gently touching his arm, "don't open it." "I have to," he said quietly, his voice heavy with the weight of a man who had spent his entire life running gently from the spotlight only to be dragged back under it by a truth too painful to hide. "If I don't, they will break the door down." Lucas clutched him tightly. "Keanu, they will twist everything, they always do." Keanu looked at his brother with soft, tragic eyes. "They already have." The banging grew louder, more urgent. Voices echoed from outside, shouting questions, accusing words, frantic demands for quotes, cameras snapping pictures through cracks in the curtains. Sandra could see the fear in Keanu's face, but beneath it there was also something else: resolve. He had reached the point where running was no longer possible. Keanu gently pulled Lucas's hand off his arm. "Stay back with Mom and Dad." Lucas shook his head violently. "No, I'm not hiding, not anymore." Keanu's father stepped between them. "Boys, enough. We need to get ahead of this, not be swallowed by it." Sandra nodded, stepping forward. "Keanu, if you open that door, you need to be ready to speak. Calmly, honestly, clearly. You can't let them decide the narrative." Keanu looked at Sandra, and in his eyes she saw something she had never seen there before: complete trust. She realized then just how deeply he relied on her presence, how much her steadiness had anchored him through this nightmare. He took a deep breath. "You're right." Another loud knock. Keanu walked toward the door. Sandra stayed right beside him. Lucas stayed behind, trembling but watching with newfound courage. Mara's sister stood near him, her expression conflicted but somehow softer than before. Keanu's parents stood together, hands intertwined, bracing themselves for a storm they had prayed would never come back into their lives. Keanu gripped the doorknob, took one last breath, and opened the door. The cold night air rushed into the house, carrying with it the blinding light of camera flashes and the overwhelming sound of reporters shouting questions at once. "Keanu, is it true you're being asked to testify? What happened with Lucas that night? Who was the woman involved? Did you lie to the police years ago? What is your relationship with Sandra?" The chaos erupted instantly, a wave of noise that crashed over them. But Keanu didn't flinch. He stepped forward, the porch light casting a soft glow over his face. Sandra stood beside him, calm and grounded, offering him strength simply by being there. Reporters pushed forward, microphones stretching like reaching hands, but Keanu raised one hand, a quiet gesture asking for silence. To everyone's shock, silence fell. The cameras continued to click, but the voices softened. Keanu Reeves rarely spoke about his personal life. When he did, the world listened. His voice came out soft, steady, and filled with sincerity. There is a story from my past that I never thought I would have to explain publicly. Something that happened when Lucas and I were young. Something that affected a family who didn't deserve what they went through. The reporters leaned in closer. Keanu continued. Many years ago, I took responsibility for something I did not do. I did it to protect my brother who was struggling with addiction and was in a very dangerous place. I believed I could handle the consequences better than he could. The crowd reacted, soft gasps, shifting bodies, whispers running through them like a ripple across water. Keanu breathed in deeply, the cold air shaking inside his lungs. I never meant to hurt anyone, especially not Mara's sister. She was trying to help Lucas that night, and I am deeply, deeply sorry for the pain that followed. He paused, the flashes grew slower, the world leaning in closer. But hiding the truth only created more damage. I should have spoken sooner. I should have trusted that honesty could heal more than silence. Sandra could see the tremor in his hands. She stepped slightly closer, her presence steady. Keanu looked into the sea of cameras, his voice quiet but unwavering. Lucas is in recovery now. He has worked for years to become someone he can be proud of. I won't testify against him in a way that tears down the progress he has made, but I will speak the truth, all of it. Lucas's breath broke behind them. His parents held each other tightly. The reporters erupted again. Are you admitting to lying to authorities? How will this affect your career? What does this mean for your relationship with Sandra? At that moment, Mara's sister stepped outside, standing on the porch beside Lucas. The reporters grew even noisier, cameras snapping furiously, but she lifted one hand, asking for silence. Her voice cracked as she spoke. I came here tonight angry, she admitted. I came to see the man I blamed for a long time. Her eyes filled with tears. But I saw something else. I saw a family in pain. I saw two brothers carrying guilt they didn't know how to let go of, and I saw someone who never meant to hurt my sister. The world seemed to freeze. She looked at Keanu with trembling sincerity. I don't forgive everything, not yet, maybe not ever, but I see the truth now, and the truth matters. The tension in Keanu's shoulders softened as she stepped back toward the doorway. For a moment, the reporters were silent, shocked, unsure how to interpret what they had just witnessed. Then one voice called out, Keanu, what happens next? Sandra watched him closely. She knew the answer mattered, but not to the media. It mattered to him. Keanu inhaled deeply. What happens next, he said softly, is healing for all of us. My brother will speak to the center. I will speak too. We will tell the truth fully and clearly without protecting or blaming, and then we will move forward. The reporters murmured among themselves, the frenzy slowly softening into something more controlled. One by one, they began stepping back, lowering microphones, sensing that the moment had reached a natural close. Keanu turned and stepped back inside the house. Sandra followed him, gently closing the door behind them. When the noise outside faded, the silence inside felt almost sacred. Lucas stood there crying quietly, his entire body shaking. Keanu walked to him, pulled him into a tight embrace, and whispered, It's over now. We tell the truth. We start again. Lucas held him like he was holding on to the only steady thing in his world. I'm scared, he whispered, but I'm ready. Keanu nodded, me too. Myra's sister watched them, her expression softening further. If you speak with honesty tomorrow, I'll be there, and I'll do my best to listen. Keanu nodded gratefully, thank you. She turned and slipped out the back door, stepping into the cold night with a heart that, for the first time in years, seemed a little less heavy. Keanu's parents hugged both of their sons, relief washing over them. The years of silence, fear, and shame that had lived inside this house for so long were finally beginning to loosen their grip. When Keanu finally turned to Sandra, his eyes were filled with exhaustion, relief, and something deeper, gratitude. Thank you, he whispered, for staying. Sandra stepped closer, her voice soft. I told you, I'm not walking away. His shoulders relaxed for the first time since the day began. I don't know what comes next, he admitted, his voice trembling with vulnerability. But I know I can't do it alone. She smiled gently. You don't have to. He breathed out slowly, like her words were oxygen. In that moment, everything that had happened, the chaos, the fear, the truth spilling into the world, felt like the breaking point they all needed to finally start healing. Keanu reached for her hand, not romantically, but with the deepest kind of human connection, trust, sincerity, gratitude, resilience. They stood there together, surrounded by a family that had been fractured but not destroyed, by a truth that had finally been spoken, and by a night that had changed everything. Outside, the crowd of reporters dispersed. Inside, healing quietly began. And as Keanu looked at Sandra, the weight of years seemed to lift from his shoulders. He whispered, almost to himself, almost like a promise, "It's time to start again." And for the first time in a very long time, he believed it.